The envelope was taped to my dock post, flapping in the lake wind like it owned the place. Formal violation notice, Cedar Hollow Lake Estates, HOA, immediate fine, $4,500, boathouse and dock deemed unauthorized community structure. I'd owned this cabin for 6 years. I stood there in my off-duty flannel, coffee going cold, reading it twice to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding something simple. My name is Marcus Reyes. I'm a detective with the county sheriff's office, and most days that means I read people for a living. Who's lying, who's scared, who's bluffing. Nothing prepared me for HOA President Deborah Whitlock, who apparently believed my private boathouse belonged to the community. What Deborah didn't know was that this cabin, this dock, and every board foot of that boathouse were named explicitly on a deed older than her HOA itself. She was about to build her entire case on a rule that didn't exist, and I was about to prove it one certified document at a time. Before this gets good, and it does, if you're new here, this is HOA Problems, the channel where we break down real property law through real conflicts, so you know exactly what your deed, your survey, and your CC and Rs actually protect. Subscribe to HOA Problems now, because the paperwork in this story is about to change everything. Deborah found me hosing off my kayak that Saturday. Detective Reyes, she said like my title was a technicality. The boathouse sits on shared lake access. The board voted last spring to formalize community docking rights. I asked which document established that. She smiled and said, "It's just how it's always been." I told her calmly that how it's always been isn't a legal standard, and that my deed listed a private riparian easement dating to 1978. She laughed it off and said the board would be following up in writing. I went back to my kayak. I should have known writing meant something official-looking and wrong. 3 days later, a second notice arrived, certified this time. Second and final warning, dock and boathouse to be reclassified as community common area, effective immediately. Fine increased to $6,200. Non-compliance will result in lien placement. No board resolution number, no cited bylaw section, just threats dressed up in letterhead. I sat at my kitchen table and read it a third time. As a detective, I've served plenty of paperwork that didn't hold up under scrutiny, and this had all the same hallmarks. Vague authority, inflated urgency, zero documentation. Something told me this wasn't really about a dock. It was about who Deborah thought would push back. That's when Tyler showed up. Deborah's 24-year-old son, driving his mother's golf cart down my gravel drive like he was inspecting new property. "We're taking the boathouse back for the community," he announced. "Dad's already talked to a contractor. You've got until Friday to clear your stuff out." I asked him evenly, who exactly authorized that? He said, the board, obviously, and added that if I wanted to make this difficult, there were ways to handle guys like me. I didn't raise my voice. I just asked him to repeat that last part slowly, because I document everything, professionally and personally. 2 days later, a letter arrived from an attorney representing the HOA, threatening a lien against my property and possible towing of my boat for continued unauthorized use of common area waterfront. I called the number listed. The attorney sounded surprised anyone had called back instead of paying quietly. That night, I pulled out the fireproof box in my closet, the folder my late father kept from the day he bought this land. Deed, old survey, a hand-annotated copy of the original covenants. I hadn't looked at these papers in years. I was about to become very familiar with every line of them. Friday came anyway. Deborah, Tyler, and a contractor in a pickup truck rolled up to my dock at 7 in the morning, tape measures in hand, without notice, without permission, stepping onto private frontage like it was already theirs. I watched from the porch, phone already recording. "You're on private property," I said, stepping down calmly. "I need you to leave the dock area now." Deborah insisted the board had emergency authority. I told her, on record, that unannounced entry onto deeded private waterfront isn't emergency authority. It's trespassing, and I know the statute by heart. Tyler stepped closer, telling me I didn't understand who ran this neighborhood. I identified myself clearly as a sheriff's detective, told him I was documenting the encounter, and asked him to step back onto the easement line. He didn't know it yet, but every word was now part of a paper trail he couldn't undo. A week later, a mailer went out to the entire community, an emergency board meeting to formally vote on reclassifying disputed dock structures as community assets, with my address printed for everyone to see. Deborah wasn't asking anymore. She was trying to make it official in front of witnesses before I could stop her. So I did what any detective would do with a case built on shaky claims. I went to the source. Monday morning, I walked into the county recorder's office, requested the full chain of title on my parcel, and asked for certified copies of everything on file since 1978. The original deed was unambiguous. It named the boathouse and dock structure as an appurtenance of the parcel, transferred with the land itself, with a private riparian easement granted directly to the homeowner, not the association, not the community, not the board in any form. I hired a state-licensed surveyor to produce a fresh certified survey map. His seal confirmed what the old deed already said. The dock and boathouse sat entirely within my platted lot lines, with zero overlap into any HOA-designated common area or easement corridor. Next, I requested the HOA's recorded CC and Rs from the county archive. Not the copy Deborah handed out, but the actual filed version. Nowhere in 41 pages did it mention private docks as common property. The clause she quoted didn't exist. She'd been paraphrasing her own opinion as bylaw. I also found something the board apparently forgot. State statute capped HOA fines at a fixed amount per violation, with mandatory written notice and a hearing before any fine could legally attach. Deborah's $6,200 demand, issued without a hearing, was already unenforceable before I'd sent a single word back. I brought everything to real estate attorney Priya Nandan, who specializes in HOA overreach cases. She spread the documents across her desk, quiet for a long moment, then said, "This isn't a gray area, Marcus. This is a board acting outside its legal authority on every front." Priya walked me through it. No board resolution number meant no valid vote ever occurred. The missing hearing violated state HOA statute, and the reclassification attempt directly contradicted a recorded deed, which legally outranks any HOA opinion, printed letterhead, or golf cart declaration. On her advice, I sent a certified letter to the entire board, Deborah and members Frank Delgado and Susan Ortiz, attaching the deed, the survey, the CC and RS excerpt, and the statute citation, requesting formal written withdrawal of all notices before the scheduled vote. Deborah didn't respond. Instead, the meeting mailer went out again, unchanged, still listing my dock for reclassification. Frank later told me privately that Deborah insisted the vote would settle it once and for all, certain that no homeowner had ever pushed back with paperwork before. I walked into that clubhouse meeting with a folder instead of an argument. 20-some neighbors filled the folding chairs. Deborah opened by reading the proposed reclassification aloud, calling it long overdue, and asked if there were any final objections before the vote. I stood, placed certified copies of the deed, the surveyor's sealed map, the filed CC and Rs, and the statute excerpt on the table in front of the board, and asked them, on the record, to identify the bylaw section authorizing tonight's vote. The room went completely silent. Frank Delgado picked up the deed first, read the appurtenance clause twice, then looked at Deborah. Susan Ortiz asked quietly whether the board had ever actually held the required hearing. Deborah had no answer, because there wasn't one. The vote never happened that night. The following week, I filed a formal complaint with the state's Real Estate and HOA Oversight Commission, attaching the same documentation. Within days, the commission opened an inquiry into the association's fine procedures and unauthorized reclassification attempt against a recorded private easement. The HOA's own attorney, the same one who'd threatened a lien, advised the board in writing to formally rescind every notice against my property immediately, citing clear exposure to statutory penalties for improper fines and unauthorized entry onto private waterfront. Deborah resigned as HOA president 2 board cycles later, after a contentious annual meeting where several homeowners, having heard the full story, requested a formal review of how violation notices were issued neighborhood-wide. Frank Delgado was elected to replace her. Tyler stopped driving the golf cart down my gravel road. I never heard another word about community docking rights. The boathouse still stands exactly where the 1978 deed always said it would. Untouched, fully mine. Fully documented, fully protected by paper Deborah never bothered to read. Here's the lesson, plain and simple. An HOA's authority ends exactly where your recorded deed, your certified survey, and your state's statutes say it ends. Verbal claims, how it's always been, and confident letterhead mean nothing against a documented chain of title. Paper wins. Always ask for the paper. I still watch the sun go down over that lake most evenings, the boathouse casting long gold shadows across water that's legally, unmistakably mine. Some fights aren't won by raising your voice. They're won in a recorder's office, a surveyor's office, and a certified mailbox. So tell me, if a letter like that showed up on your dock post tomorrow, would you pay the fine or pull your deed? Drop your answer below, hit like if you'd have gone straight to the county recorder like I did, and subscribe to HOA Problems for more real property law, told through real stories.